Sparkleton The Haunted Woods. Chapter 5. He's a good friend. Sparkleton and his friends stood at the edge of the glittering stream. It was beautiful. It was flowing fast. Willow stuck a stick into the water. It's not too deep, she said, but it's going to be hard to get across. This water is moving so rapidly. Gabe dipped a hoof in. Brrr, he said, and it's cold. Sparkleton paced up and down the bank of the stream. He was thinking hard. Maybe, he started, but Gabe interrupted him. Did I mention the water is cold? Gabe went on nervously. And oh my stars, it's late. I'm tired. Is anyone else tired? It's really dark, isn't it? Gabe was talking much faster than he usually did. There's something he's not saying, Sparkleton thought. He'd known Gabe for a very long time. He could tell there was something wrong, and then suddenly he knew. Gabe was scared. Sparkleton nodded understandingly. It's okay, Gabe, he said. I get it. He stepped closer to his friend and bumped him gently with his nose. You got us this far. Go on home and don't worry about it. Gabe gave him a grateful look. He bumped Sparkleton back. Take these, Gabe said, setting down the basket of glowing mushrooms. The three friends all tapped horns in farewell. Then Gabe turned away, but just before he disappeared over the top of the hill, he turned back again. This will help light your way, he called, and mine too. He used his confetti magic to send up a volley of fireworks. They rocketed high into the sky. Sparkleton grinned. He knew these fireworks. They lasted for hours. Sparkleton picked up the basket of mushrooms. Then he and Willow turned back to face the stream. That was nice of Gabe. If we try to wade across it, it could sweep us right back to Shimmer Lake, Willow said. We'd end up back home before we even got started. The two friends stared at the dark, shimmering water. It burbled as it ran. It almost sounded like it was laughing at them. Sparkleton stamped a hoof. I can't believe we're already stuck, he said. Willow shook her head. We can't give up yet, she said. You know my motto. Never lick an angry worm, he tried. That's a good one, Willow said, but no. It's always gobbled in time somewhere. Truer words were never spoken, Willow said, but no. If you can't get through it, get over it. What does that even mean? No idea, Willow said. I just like how it sounds. Sparkleton flattened his ears. Sometimes Willow was very unhelpful, but then, wait, he said, that gives me an idea. He looked around. Aha! See that rock, he said? He pointed a hoof at a rock sticking out of the stream. And that one? He pointed at another one. We can hop from rock to rock, and we won't even have to get our hooves wet. Willow gasped. Sparkleton, you're a genius, she said. But what if one of us slips? We'll end up back at home wet and cold, Sparkleton agreed, and with no wish-granting magic. Then we better get this right, Willow said. Chapter 6. That was weird. Sparkleton took a deep breath and leapt. His hooves hit the first stone with a clack. They hit the second stone with a click, and they hit the opposite bank with a thunk. He was standing on the other side. Alley-oop! Willow yelped and hopped after him. They'd done it. According to Rosie's map, they had to cross a big meadow next. Then they'd be at the rocky gorge. Sparkleton whistled a lively tune as they set out across the meadow. Crickets chirped cheerfully nearby as though they were singing along. Then the crickets stopped chirping. There was a snap from a nearby bush. Sparkleton whirled around, but the bush was perfectly still. Sparkleton and Willow looked at each other. That was weird, Willow said. Her voice shook a little. Sparkleton swallowed hard. He was scared too. What is that? Willow cried a few minutes later. She was pointing her horn at a ghostly yellow light. It hovered in the air over the meadow and flickered in and out like a dying fire. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Sparkleton said. He cleared his throat nervously. Maybe it was the northern lights? Oh, sure, Willow said. She sounded spooked too. That must be it. That was definitely not the northern lights, Sparkleton thought. The two friends kept going, but the night did not seem so friendly anymore, and the meadow was getting bumpier and rockier. It was hard to find footing in the dim moonlight. Ouch! Willow cried. She stumbled sideways, almost falling. My ankle! Sparkleton rushed to her side. She held up one of her hind hooves. I twisted it, Willow said mournfully. Sparkleton looked around. He spotted some tall, strong grass. He tore it up by the root and carefully wrapped it around Willow's ankle. A snug bandage would help support the joint. There, he said. He pulled it tight with his teeth. Can you walk? Willow tested it out. She walked a few steps. "It feels stronger, Sparkleton, thank you," she said. They kept going, but Sparkleton noticed that Willow was still limping. Soon, Sparkleton and Willow reached the rocky gorge. It was a deep crack in the earth. It ran all the way across the meadow. "The only way across is to jump," Willow said. She looked sad, "and I can't jump." Sparkleton knew she was right. "Don't worry about me," Willow said. "I'll wade into the glittering stream and it'll float me right back to Shimmer Lake. Gabe's fireworks will light my way home. I'm just sorry I won't get to see the whirlwind unicorn." She put the saddlebags with the camping supplies over Sparkleton's back. "Goodbye, friend," she said. "Go get your wish-granting magic." Sparkleton bumped noses with Willow. Then he walked up and down the side of the ravine a bit. He was testing the ground. Finally, he found the perfect spot to jump from. Not too muddy, not too rocky. He backed up a few steps so he could get a running start, and Sparkleton lowered his head and launched himself into a gallop. 2 strides, then 3, then... He was airborne. Time seemed to slow down as Sparkleton leapt up over the deep ravine. From the air, he could just see how deep it was. Suddenly, the other side looked very far away. Chapter 7. Turn back before it's too late. With a solid thud, Sparkleton landed safely on the other side of the rocky gorge. He breathed out a deep sigh of relief. Then he reared up. He pawed at the air in a farewell salute to Willow. "Good luck, Sparkleton," she called. He watched wistfully as she limped back into the darkness. He knew she'd be fine, but would he be fine? Sparkleton shivered. He double-checked that the unicorn star was still on his left and set out to find the sparkling boulder. The haunted woods would be right after that. Crick, crick. Sparkleton jumped. What was that weird scratching sound? Probably just some harmless animal, he thought, but he tried it a little faster anyway. Suddenly, an angry face appeared in the gloom. "Ah!" Sparkleton cried. He reared back away from it, but as the shadows shifted, he realized it was just a lumpy rock. The light from his glowing mushrooms had given it a scary face. "Nothing to be scared of," Sparkleton thought. "Rosie's spooky stories must be getting to me." He shook his head and glanced up at the unicorn star again. It felt like a friend gliding his way. He continued on the path, but he hadn't gotten very far when... "What in all that shimmer?" Sparkleton said out loud. The creepy rock with the angry face was back? But how was that even possible? Had he gotten turned around? He looked up at the unicorn star. There it was, shining on his left. He'd been going straight the whole time, but then how could the rock be here again? "I wish Gabe and Willow were here," Sparkleton said, but they weren't. All Sparkleton had was Sparkleton. But that wasn't nothing. I'm glitterific, Sparkleton reminded himself. And Rosie said I was brave. I just have to keep being brave until the morning, and then I'll finally have my wish-granting magic. He decided to sing to keep his spirits up. "I'm brave from my horn to my hooves, and nothing frightens me. I'll sleep in the haunted woods until dawn brightens me." Soon Sparkleton spotted something glimmering up ahead. It was the sparkling boulder. Behind it, a dark forest rose up. The branches of the trees shivered in the breeze. They scraped together and made an eerie creaking noise. Creak, creak. As Sparkleton got closer to the boulder, he saw that there were signs all over it. "Welcome to the haunted woods. Turn back before it's too late. Beware the whirlwind unicorn." Also, no littering. Sparkleton shivered. Maybe I should do like the sign says, he thought. Maybe I should turn back now, before it's too late. Chapter 8. I am shimmerific at camping. But Sparkleton did not turn and run. Instead, he took a deep breath. He gathered his courage and trotted boldly into the forest. The trees in the haunted woods were mossy and dark. Their branches were twisted. Something tugged Sparkleton's tail. He whipped around, his heart pounding, but there was nobody there. Maybe it was the wind, Sparkleton thought. He kept walking deeper and deeper into the woods. Soon, Sparkleton could hardly see the unicorn star. This is probably far enough, he said after a while. It was time to make camp. Sparkleton did not really know what would make a good camping spot. He'd never even been camping. So he started thinking, what if it rained? Sparkleton decided to find a spot under some trees. The leaves on the tree branches can keep me dry while I sleep, he said. What if the ground was bumpy? Maybe I can find a spot with no stones, Sparkleton said, or he could clear the stones away himself. What if he got thirsty in the night? I bet there's a spring around here somewhere, Sparkleton said. So he needed to find a flat spot sheltered by trees near some fresh water. Sparkleton poked around the woods. He did his best to ignore the spooky noises and the creaking trees. Soon he smelled fresh water. It was flat and sheltered, and there was a burbling little spring nearby. Sparkleton beamed. Finally, something had gone right. I found the perfect camping spot. But do you see all of those scary glowing eyes in the bushes there? I don't know if Sparkleton sees them, but I'd be scared. Next, Sparkleton opened the saddlebag Willow had given him. Shimmerific, Sparkleton exclaimed. Grimmy will be right back. Sorry, maybe I swallowed a bug. Shimmerific, Sparkleton exclaimed. There was a nice... Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. Not sure what I swallowed, but... There was a nice dinner of alfalfa sprouts, a warm blanket, and a book. All about goblins for bedtime reading. Sparkleton smiled. Only Willow would want to read about goblins right before bed. Sparkleton ate his dinner and settled inside his tent for the night with Willow's blanket wrapped around him. He made a bed of leaves for extra warmth. I am shimmerific at camping, he said. Before he knew it, it would be morning, and he would finally have wish-granting magic. And with that thought in his mind, he closed his eyes. Sparkleton was nearly asleep when he heard the sound. Thud. The thumping. Thud, thud, thud. Sparkleton's eyes widened. First you hear the thumping, Rosie had said. Then you hear the scratching. Was there going to be scratching next? Sparkleton's ears quivered. They were listening so hard. Screech! Sparkleton started to tremble. And then the spooky voice, Rosie had said. Sparkleton burrowed further into his pile of leaves. Sparkleton, an eerie voice whispered. Sparkleton felt a shiver run down his back. It was happening just like Rosie said it was. And then he remembered the rest of what she'd said. It knows your name, Sparkleton, and it's gonna get you. Chapter 9. Ouch. Sparkleton pulled the blanket over his head. Maybe if he hid really well. Sparkleton, the voice hissed again. Sparkleton squeaked in fright. It was the whirlwind unicorn, and it was nearby. And then there was a whoosh, and a big wind swept away Sparkleton's blanket. His eyes popped open, but he could hardly see a thing. Dirt swirled in the air around him. It seemed like the whirlwind unicorn was everywhere. First he heard it on his left, then on his right. Was he in the middle of it, or was it just moving really fast? What was going on? Sparkleton. Oh, that scary voice again. Sparkleton moved away from it until he backed into a tree trunk. He was trapped. I'm done for, Sparkleton thought. The wind whipped at his mane. I'm never going home, and everyone in Shimmer Lake will miss me forever. Yikes! The whirlwind unicorn yelped in a pretty unscary way, and the wind stopped. Sparkleton blinked his eyes. He could see again. Ouch! The whirlwind unicorn said. Except it wasn't the whirlwind unicorn. It was... Dale! Sparkleton cried. He leapt up and galloped over to his friend. Dale was flopped over on the ground. His eyes were glassy, and he looked kind of sick. I'm so dizzy, Dale moaned. He tried to stand up, but he fell over again. Right away. I don't understand, Sparkleton said. Did the whirlwind unicorn get you? Where did it go? Dale looked embarrassed. Wait a second, Sparkleton said. Suddenly he understood perfectly. You were the whirlwind unicorn. I mean, there is no whirlwind unicorn. You used your super speed to whirl around really fast. It was a trick. Dale hung his head. Sparkleton was feeling pretty annoyed. Are these woods even haunted, or is that a trick too, he asked. Then, something even worse occurred to him. I'm not going to get wish-granting magic, am I? That's right, someone said. We made it all up. Sparkleton spun around, and there was Rosie and Zuzu and Britta and Twinkle and even his sister Nella. You guys wanted to teach me a lesson for screwing up the wilderness survival test, Sparkleton said. He got it. He'd messed up everyone's day. Britta still smelled like skunk. They'd all been mad at him, but he hadn't realized how mad. Well, Rosie said, yeah, kind of. But not the way you think. Sure, we were mad at first. I'm still mad, Britta said. But then we got to thinking, Twinkle said. If you couldn't come with us on the camping trip, we'd really miss you. I wouldn't, Britta said. So we decided to teach you a lesson, Zuzu went on. A camping lesson, Dale explained. Sparkleton's eyes widened. The unicorn star, crossing the stream, jumping the gorge, finding the perfect camping spot. You tricked me into studying. That's right, Twinkle said. We wanted to help you. I didn't, Britta said. Well, Rosie said, the rest of us did, and it worked. You'll pass the test now. For sure, Sparkleton. Chapter 10. Grammy does not know what that noise is either. I feel like Sparkleton. Good work, Sparkleton. I studied for the test all over again, Rosie bragged. I made even more flashcards, Britta said. I read the book 6 more times, Dale announced. Sparkleton grinned happily. It was 2 days later, and the young unicorns of Shimmer Lake were gathered in Grandma Una's classroom. All the books were back in place, and it hardly smelled at all. They were finally going to take the wilderness survival test, and this time Sparkleton was actually looking forward to it. Settle in, younglings, Grandma Una said. She trotted up to the front of the classroom glen. Sparkleton winced when he got to his spot. He was sitting next to Britta, and she still smelled pretty bad. Grandma Una passed out the exams, and Sparkleton got to work. Name Sparkleton. Which star can you use to navigate at night? The unicorn star. Clever me. How can you cross a river that's flowing very fast? Hop on rocks. What do you need to watch out for when you're jumping over a gorge? Jump from solid ground, not rocky, not gravelly, not muddy. Number 1 jumper here. What is the perfect camping spot? Tree for shelter, no rocks, fresh water. How can you stay warm at night when camping? Pile of leaves, bring a blanket. Bonus, what can you do if you twist a hoof in the field? Ouch! Wrap with grass, much better. Grandma Una graded the exams quickly when the unicorns were done. All the young unicorns crowded around her. Everyone passes, she said, and everyone gets to go on the camping trip. Hooray! Good work, Sparkleton, Willow said. She trotted over to him with a springy step. The healing unicorns had fixed her ankle. Yeah, Gabe said. I guess you ended up learning about camping after all. I sure did, Sparkleton said proudly. And I learned something else while I was out there, too. The meaning of responsibility, Gabe asked hopefully. The secret of the Goblin King, Willow asked eagerly. No, Sparkleton said. I learned how to make someone's day better. Here, watch this. He pulled a beautiful wreath made of blue flowers out from under the bush where he had hidden it. Britta, he called. Britta walked over with a sour look on her face. What? She said. Sparkleton worked hard not to wrinkle his nose. She still stunk. Here, he said. He offered her the wreath of sweet-smelling blue flowers. I made this for you. Britta poked her head through the wreath. Suddenly, the skunk smell vanished. I don't stink anymore, Britta said. She pranced in place. Thank you, Sparkleton. So do you forgive me for getting you sprayed in the face by a skunk so I could skip a test I should just have studied for? Sparkleton asked. Absolutely not, Britta said cheerfully. We are enemies for life now. She trotted away to show off the wreath to the other unicorns. But thanks for the wreath, Britta said. Sparkleton had never had an enemy for life. He thought it sounded kind of neat. So anyway, Sparkleton told Willow and Gabe, I've been thinking. Always a dangerous idea, but go on, Willow said. I've been thinking, Sparkleton continued. I didn't get my wish-granting magic, yet. But I did have a really cool adventure with you guys, and you know what's even more magical than granting wishes? Goblins? Mushrooms? No, friends. The end.